Hello there, this is David Hayden Jones, otherwise known as Mr. Ketch on Supernatural, and you are listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello, and welcome to the latest Legion Review podcast. I'm your host, Craig McKenzie, and I've assembled the troops to talk about the penultimate episode of Season 1, Chapter 7, where answers are provided as David tries to understand the truth. We have a full house again this week with both Chris and Aaron. Hello, Chris and Aaron.
Hello, too many people in here, I can't think.
And Chris.
Hello.
How is Chris?
Chris is very good.
Excellent. Craig is also good, just good. So, Chapter 7. We're one away from the end. We've made it. Nearly.
Yeah, nearly.
Nearly. Very nearly. Before we launch into the spoiler territory, does anybody have anything kind of non-spoilery to contribute?
I do, and you need to get your swearing cannon out, or whatever you're going to use to cover this up, because I was listening to the previous podcast, and my reaction to me getting homework was, so yes, you will need to cover that word up, but I have done my homework.
Wow, you've done homework.
But I found that somebody else has done all the heavy lifting for me. So I really didn't need to do much homework. But I can confirm that it is not just 70s music in this TV series. In fact, you can guess how many decades of music has been used across across Legion. How many decades do you want to give?
4.
Why
Chris,
not 5?
Right, we both wrong. It's 6. So there you go.
6 decades of music. Wow.
Yeah, everything from the 60s up to the modern day has been used to create the atmosphere of this piece.
So, now that you've lamented the need to do homework, was there anything else before launches into spoilers?
Nope.
Good. Okay, Chris?
Nothing for the spoiler-free section.
Me neither. I just want to tear this apart and spoil everything. So, without further ado, let's go there. Okay, we're free to talk. So, thoughts on this episode? Aaron, you go first.
I enjoyed getting the answers, I think. And I am pleased to report that I did not find this in any way akin to Lost, which was my big fear, and that has been assuaged.
Okay. Well, why would it be like Lost?
Well, that was when we were talking about Chapter 5, and they were on the just on the edge of their reveals. And we were talking about how in Lost, when they started to come to the point of the reveals, they actually just said, oh, yeah, we don't know what we're doing. We're just making it up as we go along. And I feared that this show would be so wacky in its reveals that it would end up in that just sort of crazy lull. Anything's good. Fans will just eat it up anyway just because it's wacky. But no, they actually have really nailed everything down this episode and pretty much given us all the answers, and everything was, I think, believably written as a single coherent piece, and I'm very pleased about that.
Oh, well, fair enough. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's clear that the writers know what they're doing with this show. They've had a plan from day one, and it's been working its way up to this point, and now we're getting to the point where things are starting to fit into place. I mean, the randomness of the previous episodes is still what it is, but the kind of through line kind of works, or it's completely works.
It's flavour, though, now, isn't it? I mean, the use of the silent movie is in there for a reason to do with the scene itself, not because it's trying to introduce more mystery.
Yeah. You're in someone's brain, so you can do whatever you want, basically. That's the kind of thing they show with sequences like that. Chris, what are your general thoughts on the episode?
Yay, answers! We've got answers to questions. It's yay, and they even explained it on a blackboard. I felt like I was back at school. It was. I was like, now sit down and pay attention because this bit's very important. And I thought it was a good episode. It was great. Like Aaron saying, we're getting answers finally, and it doesn't seem like they came up with it on a fag packet at the end of the day. So. And there's bits that have been in there and been hinted at all the way through that I didn't quite piece together until now. So, yeah, I'm very pleased.
Well, I'm pleased that I predicted who the villain is. I was dead right. The Shadow King. They even named him one of the names I advised to look out for last week, the Farouk one.
Spotted.
Yeah, because I was kind of...
Actually, that you gave me what I thought was an incredibly overlong round of applause last week just for getting Oliver turning up. If you were to continue these rounds of applause in proportion to the size of the reveal, you're probably going to have to play about 5 minutes worth of applause now for yourself, which might be just a bit too egotistical.
I'm not going to do that, but I might self-indulge with an old applause for me. I'll pretend that all the voices in my head are quite happy with me at the moment.
Flowers at you as well.
You like me, you really like me. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, I actually didn't expect it to be explicitly revealed as the Shadow King by name, though. I actually more expected it to be, this villain is a lot like the Shadow King. But no, they just went for it. Straight in there. Adaptation, proper adaptation.
Nothing about that character, though, he says, as if he knew anything about that character. There's nothing about the Shadow King that couldn't be used, though, is it? It's not been used before. It's not got a power set that would be horrible for people to watch because it's too sensitive in some way.
Yeah. I quite liked Carrie's reaction to the reveal, though. He was like, well, of course, it must be the Shadow King. Where did you hear about this?
I did find that slightly strange. I was like, how does this character know it? And that would be an interesting backstory as well, was how did they find out about it in the first place?
Yeah. And maybe he's written in books, ancient texts and stuff. He's been around for a long time or whatever. That's kind of something that Carrie would read, right?
Well, the suggestion is that he would know about it from Xavier fighting him, presumably.
Yeah, presumably, yeah. Assuming there's that link back there, yeah.
We have to talk about that, though, and I can't make up my mind how we can be right at the start of mutants being revealed and there being a mansion built, and then if they're going to have this really super powerful telepath and Xavier being there in the background, how is he not at the forefront of this? How is he not generally known by them, or why haven't they mentioned it before? Oh, we've got this big house, we built it together, the two of us. Never any mention of, and there's this other guy who's built his own mansion somewhere else as well. It feels like it should have come up if he's that powerful. But
I get the vague impression that Xavier doesn't really want to be anywhere near the Shadow King, because that's why he gives up David in the first place, to kind of protect him from that and not have that pass on to another telepath.
But how come Melanie or Carrie hasn't spoken about these other powerful mutants that are out there? I mean, is Xavier just in hiding? And it just feels like this. I do want it to be Xavier. I think it fits all that rather nicely, but I have no idea how this small group of mutants is going to fit into a wider scheme now.
My theory is that Xavier fell out with them because he didn't like the Art Deco design of the house and wanted something more traditional.
But they kept the window that fit. They kept that circular window that fitted exactly the wheelchair wheel. So how could he possibly have fallen out with them?
Yeah, the wheelchair imagery was quite explicit. It was his wheelchair.
It must be.
Yeah, I had the X on the wheel and everything. So it is a big question where Xavier is and what he's doing and why why he's or why he's not with these people or not involved. The falling out seems to be a decent idea, but I wonder if it's just that the characters haven't mentioned this to David yet because they don't want him to know about his birth father or something.
Then they wouldn't need to do all this memory stuff with him, though, because somebody would know, surely, or somebody would say something, or they'd have a chat behind the scenes. We mustn't tell David, but we think it's this, you know.
And maybe that's still to come, who knows?
I suppose.
But yeah,
I mean, it's an open question. It doesn't need to be any more than an open question at the moment, though. No. The series has earned its trust such that if they wanted to build on that later, I believe they could do it competently.
Yeah, and you're assuming that it fits into the X-Men film universe as well. It might not. It might be a different version of Xavier.
In which case he could be in hiding, and that's perfectly believable. As I say, I think they've earned enough rope there to let us play it out a bit.
I imagine we won't find out more until season 2, unless someone has filmed an uncredited cameo that we don't know about. And that feels like something that would get out.
I think it would be pretty cool if the rescue at the very end came from Xavier. I think that would be pretty cool as a final bit. Who got him out?
A jet just turns up. And
yeah. Or they'll do the really teasery, annoying thing where you see the jet taking off and flying away, but not who was on it.
Yeah.
But that's the potential there. And Dan Stevens did a little sneaky Patrick Stewart-esque impression when he was talking about it as well. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that whole sequence was quite bananas. He's just in a coffin talking to himself, who the other version's speaking in an English accent for some reason.
I just thought that was brilliant because it's Dan Stevens talking as Dan Stevens to the character, which I just thought was very funny.
And it helped us easily tell the difference as well. I mean, obviously it's that shorthand, isn't it? Oh, this one is this version, this one's this version. But
absolutely.
Yeah, and then, as you said earlier, Chris, the chalkboard bit was brilliant. Yeah, I loved the animations and the different chalkboards with the different frames on them. It's kind of like the panels of a chalk comic book.
I'd give that scene even more recognition as well. I mean, everything you've just said, I totally believe in, but there's been a couple of points in this series where I felt slightly let down, only in relative terms, not let down totally, but where the excellence of some of the scenes has not been matched when they've suddenly gone into exposition. I think the biggest one in my mind was Carrie exposition. There was no reason for somebody just to turn around and go, so how's your other half doing? It was just a bit weird.
Yeah.
Especially when they've actually done some exposition, like the chalkboard scene, where they really put a lot of effort into disguising it. I mean, that was pretty much, 5-8 minutes of them just telling us what was true. But because they actually put it into a setup whereby the main character was learning it in a realistic, believable way, it's not exposition anymore. It is actually story again.
Well,
and
you say
I really
realistic.
value that. Well, it's in his head. It's realistic for being in an ultimate dimension. I bought into this astral plane well enough that when that was playing out, it felt like it was perfectly reasonable for that to be occurring in front of me. If they'd have said this is a normal schoolroom, then it would have felt like it was more obviously now we're supposed to realize that it's in their head and it's just a camera thing. Whereas no, this is actually David getting bored with writing, realizing his powers can actually use a chalkboard much better than his hands can, and just playing it out.
Yeah. The different frames that just kept the whole story going. And it was this, and it's almost this, okay, here's what I learned in episode 1, here's what I learned in episode 2, and here's episode 3, and so on and so on and so on.
But you don't realize that. You don't notice it. At no point do I think, unless you're specifically trying to come out of it for a reviewing purpose, do you actually come out and think, episode 1, episode 2, 3? You can if you want to, but if you're just in the moment, I don't think it occurs to you that blatantly. I think you can just enjoy it, therefore.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was, and it was a coherent narrative that I was able to follow, which was quite refreshing as well.
Yeah.
It's quite nice to have some linear storytelling for a change.
Well, this is the answers part of the season, so it's perfectly reasonable for that to come in. I wouldn't want this any earlier, though. I think this is exactly the right time to do it. It's the penultimate episode. It's let's tidy everything up so that episode 8 can be what it's supposed to be, the finale.
Yeah. And the drawing even looked like Xavier as well. It had the baldy head and stuff.
It did.
And was wearing a suit. So yeah, this Patrick Stewart cameo could happen. Maybe not this season, but you know.
I just liked the way that they still the panels were still animated in the background as they were moving about. Each story was playing out on a little loop in the background. I thought that was pretty neat the way it was done.
Yeah, and such great attention to detail.
Yeah, and the timing of it I think is great because you've now basically got two big threats to fight in the final episode.
Yeah, and it's quite good how you had this whole he's stuck in a coffin, which, you know, obviously this is ridiculous. He's been buried alive. There's no way out of this. And then there's the whole easy realization that this is all in your head, mate. Let's sort this out. You can get out of here anytime you want.
I think that was done in the right way. Actually, there's no reason why that should have been an easy realization for him earlier on.
Yeah,
because you can so easily, personal experience, get caught up in the emotion of a situation such that you stop thinking rationally. I mean, they actually hit that pretty hard, saying, right, you're not capable of doing this, but your power knows what's needed, so it's going to summon your rational self for you. Hello, I'm here, let's talk. That again, timing in episode 7, perfectly reasonable, but believably put off. I don't think the delay of giving the final answer in that sense was bad, because it did suit David's realization and the time it takes him to learn these things.
Yeah, I did like it. It was just I quite like the whole not overcomplicating it side of things, you know, where it's just, this is all in your head, so let's start using it to your advantage. It was that kind of, it felt like it should have been easy, but obviously it wasn't, because there was been so much going on in the background. But it's just this whole, let's puzzle this out, take stock of it, and realise what's really going on here.
There's actually a moment just after that as well that I was almost yelling at the screen, wanting to happen, and then it did, and it was so relieving when it did, which is he's running around this mental hospital looking for his friends after just having this realization that he's in total control. I'm just thinking, why are you running around the rooms? Remove the walls. You can just go where you want, you know.
Yeah.
And then they do it a bit overly dramatically, but at least he does it. He just shatters the entire place, and then he can go where he wants. But I was pleased that they put that in, because, you know, we would think that if we were in that case, that's what we would do, and then he does actually do it.
Yeah, it's kind of after he's walked through the door into the same room over and over again a few times.
Yeah, utterly pointless. And then he realises that it's utterly pointless. Brilliant. Yeah, it's fine, brilliant.
Yeah, it's the kind of puzzled look on his face as it keeps happening, and he's like, wait a minute.
Yes.
Yeah. It's good that he's, because this shows him getting to grips with his powers as well.
And heaven forbid what that means for season 2, but yes, it does.
Yeah. Yeah,
he does suddenly have a bit of mastery of it. You know, he was able to teleport them back at will, apparently, by the end of it.
And catch bullets.
And catch bullets, yeah. I'm forgetting the catch bullets, which is a discussion. I don't know if we want to have the discussion about that room just now or not.
Why not? Yeah.
Why not? You want to dive right in? Okay.
Go for it.
I'm wondering, they are in the astral plane, and then they step out of the mirror, and they're somehow able to manipulate the real room without being in it at the same time. I'm wondering how that happened. Discuss.
Well, there was some mention of being stuck in time or frozen in time, and that moment was kind of malleable and things.
That I understand, but I don't understand how they were able to manipulate it. Being stuck in a slow time frame, I understand, but how they were able to change it without being in it, and how some stuff moves slow and fast and was able to get pushed around.
Well, I had two things come to mind on that, and why it didn't stick as a sore thing in my head, I think, was because of these two things. Firstly, they presented it all as a coming together, because at the very end you get that explicitly where Carrie, his spirit actually merges back into his body, and the room is starting to speed up. So there's this point where the astral and the real are coming together, and there's possibly this fairy thing going on where the borders merge and bend a bit. So, you know, you're doing things in one, you're sort of doing things in the other as they're overlapping. But then secondly, I thought, perhaps more importantly, Oliver's in power was supposed to be doing something. Arguably, at base form, it was trying to give them the ability to interact with that world, because they were saying, we can't move the people, we can't move the bullets, how on earth are we going to do that? And he steps up and says, well, I know a poem about this, children. And he starts giving he's giving his music, and the music doesn't actively do anything that you can see it moving the bullet, it moving a person, but it's clearly interacting with the real world in some way. So I think it was
numbers,
supposed to be,
didn't you?
it's supposed to be he was allowing the real world to be impacted from the astral plane, and he's supposed to have the same powers as David, or at least to some degree be of a power with David. So I could easily see that his ability was, from the astral plane, we can affect the real world. So I think it was supposed to be an artistic combination of both of those. Discuss.
I suppose so. I suppose so. I mean, it's when you see the sort of the eye getting crushed and everything, I'm like, okay, so the astral plane is now affecting the real. Oh, that was a brutal way to go. He deserved it, but a brutal way to go. Being slowly folded in on yourself. I was like, maybe that's just a visual representation of what's happening in the astral plane.
Nope,
no, he actually folded in on himself. I was like, it's like, that's nice. I thought he would just sort of collapse or vanish in the real world, but no, he just get crushed to pieces. But
that's that overlap again, isn't it? What happens in the astral is happening in the real. It wasn't that way before. Before it was totally disconnected, but as that scene is moving on, the scenes are blurring and the astral merges into the real.
There's a slight issue with that in the terms of, it's not something we've seen happen before this episode. So it could head down a slippery slope of Oliver can do anything. And, I mean, it's not happened yet because I think that we still don't know enough about the powers to kind of make the determination whether it makes sense or not. But it could be one of those things. So in this episode, now he can do this. It could just be solving problems through new powers every week. But
that was a problem with David, though, wasn't it? Because we always knew that David was going to be able to do that. I mean, when he gets his power, the story's over. There's a problem. Sorry, I've just solved it. What are you talking about? Just click my fingers. Everything's just better. I mean, that is going to be something that plagues this series all the way through. And so I think they have dealt with that already. The attack on the base in one of the early chapters, you just see the aftermath where Lenny wins. Yeah. And the only reason that Lenny took any time over it was because she wanted a bit of fun, But otherwise, infinite power. Yeah.
So and it was a great sequence, and it'll be fine if we just see them doing it again. If it's possible to do these things again, and if maybe there's some kind of other difficulties introduced that that make it not possible to do it all the time and stuff. It happens, as we frequently say on Flash, where people are just as powerful as they need to be for the scene to happen, and it could fall into that trap.
It could, but they've avoided it so nicely so far that I'm not worried yet. Yeah. Even with Oliver doing what he did, which seemed to have some limitations, he couldn't just click his fingers. Yeah. Or, I don't think he was messing about when he said, I want to tell a poem and sing a song. I think he did have to do that in some way. I don't know why he needed incantation.
I think he was enabling other people to act as well. He wasn't really actually doing anything. Because his interaction was limited, as you said. It was just, when he was composing, other people managed to get moving again and so on. So I'm wondering if... he did say earlier in the episode, I think it was him that said it was going to need everybody. So you've got this whole team working together in this theme. But yeah, it seems like Oliver might need other people to do his interacting with the real world sort of thing. Which would be a nice limitation. If he's on his own, he can't do it.
They could down that route. I don't think they are going to go down that route because they've said he's like David. So I think it was more a matter of this is how the manifestation of a power that transfers across astral to real is going to work for all of them. Unless you're the Shadow King and you can do it a bit more direct, I guess. But I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, that's how they could write their way around it in the next series to make it that David's not as powerful, that in some way the sort of Shadow King entity within him helped him or enabled extra elements of his powers that he can't have by himself.
Could be, yeah.
Said that David's powers are David's and not from the entity. It could be that the entity in some way is able to enhance or has knowledge of his powers sort of beyond what he has. So.
Or just no conscience. I mean, that's good enough. David won't reach his full potential because he has a conscience and won't willfully do harm to others and things like that. They could go down that route as well.
Well, yeah, you just agreed with Chris, so I'm going to agree with you.
I'm going to agree with Aaron agreeing with you, agreeing with me.
Nice.
Insertion
achieved.
Just on the subject of Oliver, the guy's bananas, like completely bananas. I can't think of any other word to describe him. Just the spiel he was given at the beginning where is my wife Asian? Or, and he just kept asking that because he remembers having an Asian wife for some reason.
Well, yeah, he once dated an Asian girl and is mixing them up, I guess. I struggled with that a bit, actually, at the start. And I think they solved it for me when they kept going with it. But it was a bit of a tightrope when he started talking about, what's that word, dishes, instead of whatever word he was trying to say. Because I felt that was a bit callous. Because they've done, in chapter 1, one of the things I thought was that they'd seemingly been much more careful with representing mental illness than a lot of other shows I've seen, where essentially they just say, right, if you're mentally ill, you just say stupid things that the audience will find funny. And that is so horrible that when they'd actually been that a bit more careful with mental illness, I was really pleased. But then they launched in this chapter 7 with him just putting in extra stupid words in, and he just sounded like a knob, to be honest. But then they did stick with it, and they did show him having difficulty, and so I think they recovered it. But I did have a trouble when the start, and he just sounds like a clown. And then immediately cuts into using these really eloquent sentences, but occasionally just slips a bit of madness in. And I thought, you should have jumped straight to that. Have him talking, but just without meaning to get something wrong or mistakes who somebody is. And it'd be a much better handling of the mental illness. So I wish they'd just jumped to that rather than the nonsense.
Well, is it not more that he's lost touch with reality rather than he's got a mental illness? He's just been in there for so long. They say 20 years, I think, that he just doesn't know what's real anymore, and that's why he makes all these mistakes. He's not even used to talking to other people. No, but
the first part of it, he opens with, I forget words. You're standing there on a dish. And it's just this nonsense sentence that makes him look like a clown. And after he's explained to you, because he actually says this, he says something like, I have trouble remembering the words anymore. And then as soon as he tells you he has trouble with words, he then launches into this long paragraph where he remembers lots of words and doesn't have any trouble. But then they slowly start working in these little problems with words. And I'd rather them have just given us this much more delicate, much more sensitive, much more intelligent second part of that setup, where he just simply does have trouble with words. And because he's having forgetfulness, he doesn't even really realize. He could just stop and have trouble with a word, or he could just ask about my wife, this Asian girl. And then Carrie says, no, you're not married to an Asian girl. And it's this mistake, but it's a mistake that anybody could conceivably make in conversation. I think the sensitivity of that is important when you're dealing with mental illness. And that brief sojourn into clownish behavior, I didn't like. Now, as I say, they recovered from it. It was just it was just a tiny bit at the start of the chat. But because I've raised this show to quite the bar, I think I do notice when little things come up that I don't like because they stand out because of all the things that I do really like.
Yeah, I kept imagining the actor from the IT crowd that plays the boss playing in that scene when I was watching it, and I wonder how much more entertaining it would be if it was that actor. There's something to think about.
Too clownish, I think, for me. I mean, I see the parallel between him and the guy already, but yeah, no, I want it as it is. I don't want him in there.
That means I can put the best of in the show notes again.
That's the element that I always find. I just find that character distracting at that point that I just keep picturing Matt Berry for some reason. And I just can't distract myself away from it.
It would make the serious scenes impossible, though, if it was him, I think.
Yes.
I mean, when it comes out, what we need to do is just edit Matt Berry into it.
And it would work. Completely work.
And it wouldn't seem off the wall, I don't think. Come here and sit on my giant hand. It just wouldn't seem odd at all.
Yeah. And it's kind of stuff he says, yeah. Yeah. Although obviously it was quite expositional, but the way they did it was entertaining. Even Aaron didn't get on with it as much as maybe I did. I thought it was pretty funny, and it gave us quite a bit of information. That's where we got the Shadow King stuff. But I loved it when Carrie went out into, I don't want to say the wider world, but when he went out into the rest of the astral plane or David's brain or whatever it is, and he speaks to Sid, and she completely understands what they need to do next without him having to tell her, and it kind of flips that where she explains it to him just as he's about to tell her. It's like the whole, okay, first we need to do this, yeah, and then we're doing this. Yeah, you're right, completely right. I thought that was a really good little reversal. It's like, shows how much Sid is starting to understand everything.
Well, you saw that last week where she was a good number of steps ahead of the others.
Yeah.
One that was sort of looking about going, no, this world isn't right, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Sort of getting glimpses behind the curtain that everyone else wasn't quite seeing.
Yeah.
So she was there and ahead. I mean, the element of the glasses that sort of turned the world black and white, I thought was excellent. It was a nice little... It was weird in the way that this program does, but the fact that it sort of turned it into this black and white style, the horror of the walls and everything stayed. I thought that they would put the glasses on, they would see a sort of normal plain wall, take it off, and then you would see the blood-stained, broken, shattered wall. But instead, it kept that element there. It just took all the people out.
Yeah.
All those sort of external forces and noises out of the way.
Yeah, and when it's in colour, it's a zombie apocalypse, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that. And I thought it was quite a neat way of doing it. The silent movie was great. Yeah, the sort of little silent movie placards coming up.
The text boxes, yeah. It's like, David! Yeah. Was brilliant. And
those glasses, by the way, I think they were a nice use of tech. That I like that stuff when they got a bit clever with it, rather than just having the screens in the sky. Yeah, that one still stands out for me as what the bloody hell. That could have been anything. Whereas these little glasses were a nice, clever addition that made sense.
Yeah. They weren't really tech as such. They were more of just an object inside the mental space that visualize seeing the truth, I suppose.
Absolutely, but they fulfilled that same purpose of we've come up with a way of solving this, and it's just it's creative with a purpose rather than just chucking something out there. So the glass is really good.
Yeah, and the fact that the eye could exist in both sides as well.
We just didn't care there was a zombie apocalypse because we just loved that idea.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that he's gone because it feels like there's something we don't know with all that.
I think, like I said last week, I think he was the sort of villain of the piece that they needed to run throughout. The henchman of the bigger bad that needed to be dealt with by the end, so that the sort of boss will get away at the end, but the henchman got destroyed by it.
Yeah.
He seems like he's going to be more than that early on, though, when he's talked about as the original student that got away because he had a change of philosophy. It made you think that he was going to come along. I think we even discussed it. So it wasn't me, Chris maybe that said he will show the other side of the argument to David. And that now that's not in there at all. Division 3 are definitely the bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like a bit of a waste of him dispatched, but maybe he's not gone completely. Maybe there are other versions of him or something. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I'm pleased, by the way. Well, actually, I don't know. Is Rudy dead? Answer me that.
I don't know.
We don't know. Right? I didn't want him to be dead because I thought he suffered unfairly in the previous episodes by being sent off red shirt into the distance to be killed. And then, of course, he is still at least vaguely alive enough that he can pull Lenny back.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm glad he got something, given how poorly he got treated by being, wardrobe, why are you carrying that horrible shirt towards me? Sorry, mate.
I think you saw him when they go back to Summerland and they get transported back. I think they were carrying someone.
Oh, he's on the stretcher, definitely, but that suddenly made me think, is he on the stretcher because they're taking him back to be healed, or is he on the stretcher because they don't want to leave his body behind and they want to bury something? And I thought, I don't know now.
I would think it was for healed. I don't think they would carry him back if he was dead. I have that feeling, but I'm not too sure.
I suppose we might find out next episode.
Yes.
Maybe not, but maybe.
Well, I have my hope, as I say. I don't want him to go out in that fashion.
Yeah. I liked the use of Lenny, or the Shadow King. We'll just call her Lenny for simplicity's sake, because that's the character we've known her as most often, I suppose. I thought Aubrey Plaza was genuinely creepy in this episode, especially in the silent movie bit. The crazy eyes and the dishevelled hair and stuff like that. She was hunting them down. That was really well done.
It was
Sorry.
Karen. All right. It was the mad scientist hair that was doing it for me. The sort of maniacal look, and the mad scientist. You're expecting her to be throwing a massive lever on the wall and sort of bringing Frankenstein's monster to life. It's that kind of thing. That's what it made me think of. Sort of seeing her in the black and white pictures.
Yeah, and she was winding up David's sister as well about the whole adoption thing. It suggests to me that there's something about that she wants to know. I mean, obviously, it must be getting back to Xavier.
Well, there's a question that gets asked early on, I think, by Lenny that I didn't follow. And I don't know if I missed it, but maybe you got it. She asks, it's like the third thing I've written, so it must be right. Or it's after I noticed the wheelchair too. So I think she says, "What did he do with it?" And I thought, what does it refer to here? Because you wouldn't say it for David.
Yeah.
So I thought, what is she after? What is she looking for? I don't know if it came back or not, or if I picked up on something that shouldn't have ever been there. But
I didn't notice it in the first place. Yeah. It is interesting.
I think I probably wrote it off as her talking about David rather than something in particular. If I want to speculate, I would say if there was a physical body the last time round, I would suggest they were thinking of the body.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, unless she dehumanizes David that much that she just calls him it.
Well, he said, what did he do with it? So I thought that he was David. Although I suppose the he could have been Xavier.
Yeah.
But no, I've got nothing. I've only got that enough to bring out another.
What did he do with it? Yeah, because it was very much around the adoption at that point, wasn't it? She was asking, when did David come to live with you, and what were your memories of that day and all that stuff.
And she gets really frustrated and just yells out, "What did he do with it?" And Amy's not going to have any idea whatsoever.
Yeah,
but it's a frustration question rather than a real question.
Oh, they did ask another bloody question. Oh. It's a good question. Maybe we'll find out next episode. Who knows? Maybe I'll scour the internet to see if there's anything else. Nah, I'm not going to do that now, though. We can leave it on the animated chalkboard for next week and see if it comes up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, Aubrey Plaza was great in this episode. I mean, she's always been good in this show, but the kind of way that she's starting to become a bit more unhinged as time goes on is great to watch.
Well, she's very feral in that black and white movie scene, which I struggled to think because I quite like to know the purpose. I thought, why black and white? What's the value here? And I was actually wondering the same thing when I saw the silence in the chapter 5. And I think it might have just been pure atmosphere.
Yeah.
As you say, they managed to get it such that she seemed really threatening. And when the crazy scientist hair was crawling across the floor at them in that very feral way, I think it does add that strength of evil that comes with pantomime villain, but twisted into the form of some horror movie that it was just, quite threatening to watch. So I'm happy that that's all it was. But yeah, she was very good with it.
It's quite bizarre that they refrained from using the silent movie piano music.
But that would have been too pantomime, I think, as it was, where it's using the cards. It was half of it, which takes away just enough of the silliness that you end up with comic horror. So you don't really think that it's so horrible that it's guts and gore, but equally it's not too comic, such that it's just a nonsense and there's no threat value. Right? I think I felt that if there was a line they were walking, I think they walked that perfectly, and the piano move, it would have just twat them off the side and they would have fallen.
Yeah, I liked the music that they ended up using when Oliver started composing. That was really cool, and how it was cutting between the black and white, the non-black and white, the astral plane, the real world, that kind of stuff.
Oh, I meant to look that up, actually. What is that music? Because that's really famous, isn't it? That's so famous that I can't for the life of me remember what it is.
Is it the Sugar Plum Fairy one? Is it that? Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. I wrote that down, but I didn't know if that was the actual piece or not.
I want to say yes, but
that sort of.
I'm just going to say yes. I'm going to say you're right. Absolutely, I can't.
And I'll be corrected next week when someone goes, "No, you were completely wrong."
Yes.
I'm stalling you while I look it up.
And he's stalling and stalling.
I don't know. That's the
answer. This gap will be edited out later, and Craig will come on and go, "No, you're correct," or he'll go, "No, you're completely wrong." It is, of course.
Yeah.
Well, you keep talking. Well, you keep talking because the heavy lifting that I did for last week's homework, by the way, has given me the website that will actually provide this information.
Is it called TuneFind, perchance?
It is in fact called TuneFind, yes. Are you on there right now?
It'll be Bolero. It's the one that Torval and Dean did.
Oh, that's exactly it. Yes. Oh, thank you for doing
Bolero.
God,
I'm just annoyed now that I wrote the word Sugar Plum Fairy down and not Torval and Dean.
Quick, edit that in and give him the correct name. Brilliant. There we go.
Then a round of applause. No.
Yay.
Yeah, like the world's smallest. If you've got the world's smallest round of applause,
I'll put in a slow clap
on an open mic night when only half the people turned around to look at you. That kind of applause is what it is.
I will do the slow clap. So, Bolero, that's what it is. I didn't know that's what it was called. I wonder what the Sugar Plum Fairy thing is then. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll find out what it is and I'll put it in the show notes.
Just to find out. That's my classical music knowledge there. That's why I don't do the classical music programs on a Sunday.
Shameless plug. I like it. Yeah. And the way they subdue the Shadow King or Lenny or whatever it is, it came back to that crown thing again. You know, that device that Carrie built and put round his head, and somehow that puts her in the figurative coffin.
Well, you don't like that?
No. I thought it was. That was quite interesting. I mean, it's one of those. I've just magicked up this this piece of tech that's going to solve everything, and it breaks the connection to the entity for some reason. It kind of works. It works in the sense of this is what it's going to do, but I'm glad that that isn't the solution to the problem, because that would be rubbish.
I think if a man can build his own imaging machine in a random building in the middle of a forest, then building something that can interact with brainwaves and separate them doesn't seem too weird and out of the question.
Don't the sky screen projector that he also.
Clearly he can do whatever he damn well pleases.
Yeah.
I think it was more, I present to you the untested machine that may or may not actually work, or may not separate the wrong entity.
Yeah, It reminded me of the, something that would happen in Flash in some ways, where Cisco would just be like, I've just come up with this thing that's going to solve the episode forever.
Yeah, but as you say, it wasn't that bad. It was just, no, here's how we can get you to a point where you can actually have a fight because you've got your separate identity, which is what they needed to do.
And then there was the bit where it was like, I don't know if this thing's strong enough, so please don't move around too much. And,
nice.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a disturbing image in my head, actually, towards the end. It might have even been one of the last shots that I don't think was intentional, but I've just been tuned over the years as a film watcher to look for it, which was there's a man who has lots of power, who has this odd-looking circlet on his head with pointy bits, and then all of a sudden they put a really strong blinding light coming from behind him, and I thought, I know you didn't mean to make that parallel. Surely you didn't. But as I say, I'm so attuned to looking out for those things now that I couldn't help but see it.
Maybe David is the mutant messiah.
Exactly. He can't be that. I'm sure that's not purposeful, but I couldn't help but go there.
Well, that makes Xavier God, doesn't it?
Well, given how much reverence you've given to the character in the early episodes of this podcast, I could see that you might not be too offended by that.
Yeah. It was. I guess it was almost a thorny crown, but yeah, I didn't see that thing myself. Maybe I just didn't let myself see it. I'm just hoping mutant Jesus isn't a thing that they do.
Yeah, I don't think they did. I think it was just it was just in my head.
Yeah, I did like the whole calm before the storm part at the end. It was this everything seemed resolved. You could almost end a season there. Like, okay, we've got a handle on this. Everyone's out. Oliver's back in the real world. We're in the Institute. Everyone's happy. And then everything just goes mental. Where the Division 3 show up. The coffin cracks. Presumably because David's put under a bit of stress. And he's maybe ready to use his powers.
Well, the machine just isn't perfect, is it?
Yeah.
David didn't put Lenny in the coffin. It was the machine that did it, so it just doesn't have to be as strong or as capable as he could be.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if they'll all be locked up in Division 3 next episode, and David will be fighting Lenny in his head.
I think they've got to do what Chris said at the very start of this, what we opened with. They've set up two conflicts. They've got a physical conflict and a mental conflict, but part of me thinks they're going to have to play them out because it's the finale. I don't think I would want to go from one high point straight to a low. I think I'd want them to just carry on from where they've set off. I want to see what happens when they're presented with that fight.
Yeah, well, presumably David could just kill them all, in a fraction of a second.
But he'll be distracted by Lenny, so they'll be saying, "Get us out of here," and he'll be, "No, my head," and everybody will have to do something. It's actually classic plotting where you give everybody something to deal with that fits their own ability level. So they've pitted the two strong mental powers against each other, and then they've pitted everybody else against a physical threat. I think I want to see it. I don't think I want them to just then do a standalone episode where they have to somehow get out of the base. I think that'll be a bit dull.
Here's an interesting theory. What if Sid swaps bodies with David so that he can do something outside and she can deal with Lenny?
Could be.
Crackpot theory.
Can she deal with Lenny? That seems a bit unfair.
Well,
given that
maybe
David's
not
learned
deal
how
with
to
her.
do it.
Just distract her for long enough. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Assuming that Lenny doesn't follow David around. Or even if she does, she could follow him into Lenny's head when his consciousness moves. And then Sid could use his powers.
In theory, if Lenny breaks out and is in control at the point where they're captured, who would Lenny side with?
Ooh.
Over Division 3 or the others? Because I don't think anyone. I don't think she would overall ally with anyone. But I think if her goal was just keep David's friends locked up and away from him or dead, and I get the body back, I think she would make some sort of deal with Division 3 in a way. But whether that will actually happen or not, I don't know.
Interesting theory, yeah. It's possible. Yeah, you lock these up and I'm going to move to Mexico or somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I will help you if I decide it. Or if I'm going to be an overlord, I'll be an overlord using your secret organization to do so. Yeah.
There's one thing I saw that made me think they might do a more go to the base and then have to break them out thing that I've said I probably wouldn't like, but I think could be viable, which is the Carrie connection, where she says at the end, "I needed you and you left me." That feels like it's a setup for something which could be then in the last episode where that bond has to be forged again somehow.
Well, we'll have our crackpot theories. Cool.
Yep.
Always, I love a crackpot theory. It's good to speculate and then be proven wrong the next week.
Absolutely.
But the show could just go in a wildly different direction for the last episode. We just don't know. It seems like it's heading one way, but it might not be.
I am expecting a proper big Bollywood finish, though, by the way, because I've seen lots of... They opened with a dance number that was, I think, for the funds, really, that chapter 1 was. But slowly the use of the dance and the music has been put to much greater purpose throughout, especially, and I missed it talking about last week, the Lenny's dance number where she was celebrating the freedom of David's mind. I think that was one of the best ones they've had. But I think they have to trump that next week with a massive finishing Bollywood song and dance defeat of Lenny by the power of music and song.
I'd be up for that. I think that would work.
Dance off to save the universe.
I want to see that. I will not be happy unless they do anything less.
How do we decide who gets control of your body? We'll have a dance off. Yeah, why not?
Whoever has the best rhythm wins.
Well, I've done everything else. They've done beat poetry, silent movies. Bollywood was the first dance. I mean, they've ticked so many boxes. X Factor or whatever it is could be the last one they've not done.
It could be. Yeah, or they could do some kind of old-timey musical thing. That would be... Yeah, they haven't really done that.
Don't forget Muppets on the Banjo.
Yes,
yeah, they've ticked most of the other boxes. There's nowhere else for them to go.
Yeah, I imagine there will be some kind of big musical finish of some sort, because music has played a big part in this series since it began.
And in such a good way. So, yeah hopeful for it.
The musical choices have always been very effective and very careful, I think. Yeah, on that note, have we covered everything? Is there anything we've missed or anything that wants to be added?
I was just annoyed with myself at not putting Shadow King and King the dog together in my own head before it was explicitly said during the episode.
Well, I only mentioned the Shadow King a couple of weeks ago, didn't I?
But at no point did I click and go, oh yeah, the dog's called King, isn't it? No,
I completely forgot the dog was called
Not at all. I forgot the name of the dog, and it annoyed me to the point where when it said in the episode, I went, oh, why did I not pick that up?
And Carrie had the same problem. He was like, of course the dog's called King. It must be the Shadow King. It's a bit of a leap, but okay. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I think I've covered everything that I thought of. I'm looking forward to seeing how this wraps up. I have no idea how it's going to wrap up, but I'm interested to see it. I think covering the season in this way has been worthwhile so far. I mean, obviously we'll reiterate this next week when we give it the big goodbye. When we do our own Bollywood musical number. We're not doing that.
No, this doesn't count as homework because you said it in the session while I'm here, so I don't have to do this. I was here.
You're here to defend yourself. It's no fun.
Yeah.
Aaron, anything to add?
Oh no, we've covered what I want from last episode. I'm happy to leave it on that. Big Bollywood number.
Big Bollywood number. Okay. We'll close on... We won't close on a song, but the episode might, or the season might. So, if that is everything that everybody wanted to say, I'll close this off and we can return back to our normal lives. That'll be a yes then.
I'll be a definite yes.
Okay. Well, Chris, as always, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And Aaron, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And we'll have a full house for episode 8, all going well.
Yes.
Good. I like it when we have a full house. It's a small team, but an important team.
It's a small house. It would be a shame if there were too many of us.
Yes. Okay. Well, I bid everybody good night. Until next week. Good night. No.
Good night and good morning and good evening and have a nice lunch and enjoy your drive.
This thing now has more endings than the final Lord of the Rings movie, so call it.
Is this the post-credits sting now? Or is this the pre-post-credits sting? Or is this the mid-credits sting? At which point on the podcast do the credits roll at the end?
It'll be after this. There'll be no post-credit. But I was just giving everyone a chance to say goodbye to our loyal and faithful listeners.
Bye, loyal and faithful listeners.
Au revoir.
Goodbye.
That was our discussion of Legion Chapter 7. One more to go, and we'll be right here next week talking about it. Thanks to 331 E-Rock for the supplied music, and as always, if you like what you heard here, please subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, or any major podcasting app. I hope you'll join us in the next Kneel Before Pod.